Let me ask you something. When was the last time you woke up tired and told yourself it was normal? Not sick, not burned out, just tired. When did exhaustion become part of your personality? Most women I know over 40 aren't confused. They're informed, but a bit overloaded. And today we're talking about something that sounds simple, almost boring, as a matter of fact. Sleep. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been listening for a minute or so, you already know this is a space where science meets lived experience and midlife is treated as an advantage, not a limitation. Why are we talking about this now? A little pre-warning, this is a long episode. You will see, according to research, we are in a global sleep crisis. So I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And as always, if this sparks something for you, you can research it a little bit more or reach out to me. I'll happily look into it for you as well. But stay with me. Why sleep? Well, first, March is National Sleep Awareness Month here in the States. Globally, as I mentioned, we are in a sleep crisis. Yep. Not a cute, I need matcha, I need more coffee moment, but a documented public health problem. According to ResMed's 2025 Global Sleep Survey of over 30,000 people across 13 countries, 7 out of 10 people struggle with sleep. Nearly 3 nights per week are unsatisfactory. 22% choose to just live with it. And 71% of workers have called in sick at least once due to poor sleep. For my global listeners out there, Japan currently ranks among the most sleep-deprived nations, with 41% getting 6 hours or less. But here's what matters most to us as a collective. Women, particularly in midlife, report significantly poorer sleep than men. Now, this is not random. It is not cosmetic. It is cardiovascular. It is neurological. It is metabolic. Yes, ladies, it is emotional. And if you are between 40 and 60, this conversation is for you. I'm going to share my real-life accountability moment during this episode. Full disclosure, it's been 9 months since I moved into my new space. Now, when I say that out loud, it sounds like a long time. However, work, life, contractors, budgets, all the lifing things. Fun facts, it took 4 months to order and receive my bed after moving in, because clearly I had to get a feel for the space first. Then, once my bed came, I had to wait and see how that fit before ordering nightstands. Those took an additional handful of months. I'm going to give a little shout out to Gothic Cabinet Craft. They did beautiful work. Custom now builds do take time, especially here in New York City. But the truth, I digress, I didn't have a fully intentional sleep set up until January. No proper lighting. I'm still working on that. No true wind down environment. No protected ritual. I'm still working on my sanctuary and my peace here. And I also, in this time, I've interviewed sleep experts, including Dr. Daniel Barone from Weill Cornell in season 1. So we discussed sleep apnea, menopause, circadian rhythm, blue light, all the modern day things. He also reminded us that sleep apnea skyrockets in postmenopausal women. And yet, my environment is not optimized. This episode is keeping me accountable. Therefore, this month, I'm treating my sleep space like I treat my health. Because midlife is not the season to casually sabotage your nervous system. You might be listening and can probably agree. Let's get back to real world problems. But I like to be transparent to let you know I'm in this with you. And that I don't mean to seem preachy. A lot of these things, when I research it, yes, it's newsworthy. And I can always use a little brush up myself, a little reminder. And, I'm learning as I go here too, this whole midlife thing. Let's get back to the global problem, why this isn't just being tired. The broader picture is this: a major review published in PubMed titled The global problem of insufficient sleep and its public health implication cause, quote, sleep loss, end quote, a public health epidemic. Why is this? Because insufficient sleep is linked to cardiovascular disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, obesity, hypertension, cognitive impairment, and mood disorders. Not surprised. None of this is new information. We've heard this all before. A recent JAMA, which is the Journal of American Medicine Network, open cohort study found sleep deprivation associated with a 29% increase in mortality risk, not fatigue. We're talking mortality here. This is nothing to ignore. How is sleep connected? Sleep deprivation, it's going to raise your inflammatory markers. It's going to alter the way you metabolize your LDL, which is the one we're more concerned with. It dysregulates leptin and ghrelin, which are the hunger hormones. It impairs our glucose regulation, how we're metabolizing our sugar. It increases neurobehavioral reaction time deficits. What does that mean? We're just not as reactive. Our reflexes are not as sharp. Therefore, it's increasing workplace and driving accidents. None of this is positive. Bottom line, lack of sleep increases risk taking behavior. And here's the kicker, which you may know some of these people because I know I do. I'm probably one of them. Sleep deprived people often don't realize their cognitive performance is impaired. You think you're fine, but you're not fine. And we probably all know someone suffering, like I mentioned, right? From time to time. I do try to catch up on the weekends, even though I know that's not appropriate sleep hygiene. But, we do what we got to do. Why does midlife hit us the hardest? Why do we feel that, we could function on less sleep when we were younger, but now why is it maybe in our 40s and our 50s, it takes us a little bit longer to recover. We're going to zoom in on that. So, first of all, sleep disruption is not random. It's hormonal. Surprise. One more thing that our hormones is wreaking havoc on our bodies. During menopause and menopause, declining estrogen and progesterone alter multiple systems that regulate our sleep: our neurologic, thermoregulatory, respiratory, endocrine, and cardiovascular. Again, this is not cosmetic. This is not a biological conundrum. This has nothing to do with beauty sleep, although don't lose sight of that. But this is really wreaking havoc on our bodies. As I said, the whole increase in mortality, morbidity. We're going to hit on estrogen first. So estrogen declines. Estrogen plays a central role in sleep architecture. How does it do that? Well, it regulates our serotonin, our feel-good hormone, norepinephrine, body temperature, our mood stability, and our REM sleep patterns and our melatonin signaling. When as estrogen fluctuates and declines, this is when we feel those hot flashes set in. They start to increase, those night sweats from fragmented sleep as well. And then our mood becomes a little more labile, unpredictable, up and down. And this is also because sleep becomes later and less restorative. We're not feeling rested. Even though there's nights where we try to go to bed early, we still wake up tired. Up to 75% of women experience vasomotor symptoms during the menopausal transition. You're not alone, okay? If you're some of the lucky 25% of women globally who do not have menopausal symptoms, good for you. 75% of women are not as fortunate. And every hot flash at 2 o'clock in the morning is not just uncomfortable and frustrating, it is a physiological stress response. Because think about it, it's putting stress on the body. That's not good for your cortisol and your other hormones. Your body is responding. What happens? Your core temperature rises, your heart rate's going to increase. As I said, those cortisol levels are going to surge. Sympathetic nervous system is going to activate. And then what happens? Imagine that you are awake, you're sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning, not because you're fragile, but because your thermoregulation shifted. This is multifactorial. And actually, I'm hoping you're feeling a little bit better as you listen to this because I know when I'm feeling like I'm losing my mind or I'm losing control, when I can connect the dots and put some science to it and not feel like I'm being a victim or feeling sorry for myself, but shit's happening with our body and we really don't have control over this. So I thought that this information would help you feel less frustrated, maybe less hard on yourself. Let's get back to this estrogen because estrogen also modulates our REM sleep, our deep sleep. And then as these levels fluctuate, our REM stability declines. And what's that going to do? It's going to affect our memory consolidation, our emotional processing, and our next day cognitive clarity. That's why we're going to feel off the next day. So when women say, I'm sleeping, but I don't feel really rested and restored, I'm still tired, this is often because your REM sleep is disrupted. And now we're gonna talk about progesterone decline because the progesterone plays a big part, not only the decline, but how it's not in proportion to our estrogen. They are not in this beautiful sync that they are when we are having our regular 28-day cycle. Now, progesterone's declining. And progesterone has those calming properties. This is going to lead to our irritability. How does it do this? It enhances our GABA activity, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. This is what's, like I said, that's going to make us or allow us to feel at rest, at peace, calm. And also, it has a mild sedative effect. And this is what also stabilizes our breathing when we're sleeping. As this progesterone fluctuates and declines, anxiety can increase. Sleep becomes less stable, nighttime awakenings increase, and breathing regulation shifts. Now, this is where the conversation becomes clinically significant. As I discussed with Dr. Barone in season 1, declining estrogen and progesterone alter airway tone and respiratory drive, increasing the risk of obstructive sleep apnea in postmenopausal women. This is really important because I think a lot of us, including me, we associate sleep apnea with being overweight. Your chances of sleep apnea increases not because you gained weight, not because you just threw in the towel and stopped trying, but because your airway physiology changed from all these hormonal fluctuations. And this actually really goes dramatically underdiagnosed. When you think about it, what I was thinking about when he said that the first time around, and then I revisited again for this episode, imagine so many doctors are not even correctly diagnosing menopause. If we're not, hitting the root cause, if we're not properly diagnosing menopause, a lot of women are suffering sleep apnea and they're not even aware of it. You might want to check in with your doctor about that. And here's another thing. You might not even realize it unless you're wearing some kind of device and monitoring your blood saturation, your O2 sats, because women do not often present with loud snoring. Instead, they present with insomnia, morning headaches, anxiety, fatigue, brain fog. And let's face it, a lot of those things just getting written up as acceptable as the human female experience. But in fact, it could be something more severe. And untreated sleep apnea is directly associated with high blood pressure, heart arrhythmias, one particular atrial fibrillation, stroke, heart failure, and coronary artery disease. I know I'm repeating a lot of these things in different sections are very similar and they're overlapping. However, I did that to show so you could see how these things stack on one another and how everything is related. All these coronary events, cardiovascular events, now bring us to the larger cardiometabolic implications, why women's risk of cardiovascular effects increase during menopause. Because as our estrogen drops, we lose that protectability of estrogen. So the estrogen protects the endothelial layer lining of our arteries. And once we lose that protective ability of the estrogen, because the estrogen's declining, so we lose that protection, then our arteries become a little more stiff. This is why up until menopause, you probably hear a lot of studies where they say premenopausal women are at less risk of heart attack than men, except for on the other side, it's because we're losing these protection of the estrogen. So I think it's really important to understand that because I think we think as women, we're generally less susceptible to harmful cardiovascular events like heart attack and stroke, but that is not in fact true once we get past transitioning into that next phase. Now let's talk about melatonin and circadian shifts. Melatonin production naturally declines with age, with everything else. Postmenopausal women with insomnia often demonstrate lower nocturnal melatonin. And then with these lower melatonin levels, we're now going to layer in modern day light, which is blue light exposure from all of our devices, our computers, our laptops, everything that we bring to bed with us. When we bring all these things to bed, we are more likely scrolling on them. We have this constant stimulation on top of the light. Our brains are constantly stimulated by feeds coming in 24/7. And we also have irregular sleep schedules. Now, kudos to you if you go to bed and wake up the same time every day. A lot of us don't have that luxury. I know I work in healthcare. It's different depending upon the day, although I do try. Full disclosure, I am finally, for once, recording this episode at a reasonable hour. I usually record things very early in the morning or really, really late at night. I am actually at a very decent time of day, which is great. It's about, I think, 6 p.m. or so. Very acceptable. We are compounding a biological decline with all these modern day behavioral disruptions. Since we're feeling disrupted, we're going to talk a little bit about cortisol and our midlife stress load because I feel like this is like another layering that we need to think about. Cortisol, our stress hormone. That's what gets us out of the bed in the morning, which means it should peak in the morning and decline at night. But in midlife and in high stress states, which happens to be a lot going on at midlife, we've got stressors. We've got career intensity. We've got caregiving for teens or aging parents. I know many midlifers who started their families later in the game and they actually have small children or even infants in their 40s and 50s. There's a different kinds of financial pressures. And then there's relational strain, your partner, work, friends, family. Mayo Clinic research has shown that women reporting greater burden from menopause also demonstrate higher cortisol levels. Now, what does this mean? Elevated evening cortisol means, right? Because I was saying in the morning it should be high to get you out of bed and it should wind down it in the evening. But in midlife, our cortisol tends to be elevated late in the day and so your body thinks it's daytime at 11 o'clock in the evening. You're wired when you should actually be winding down. You're exhausted when you should be alert. And then you're wondering what has changed. This, my friends, is what has changed. Your biology, not your discipline, not your good eating, not your workout schedule, but despite your sleep habits and your hygiene, biology is working against you. You know, sometimes I think when I'm researching and I'm reporting and I'm recording these episodes and I'm interviewing guests, I always keep thinking, I want to keep this positive because I don't want this to seem like it's the end. However, what we measure improves. So I'm hoping that this is not a downer, but this is giving you the information so you can respond appropriately. Because even as I'm reviewing this research and saying it out loud as I record this, I'm thinking, this is not very positive. But, we can change the narrative on that. What we're trying to do here is inform so we can make the changes and have our body work instead of against us, reprogram it to work for us. The cardiovascular reality that this is not just about fatigue. The National Institute of Aging, which has a lot of really good information, it is one of the institutes within the National Institute of Health, and it focuses primarily specifically on aging, longevity, and age related diseases, including heart disease, cognitive decline, and menopause related changes in sleep. I was looking at an article, and I don't want to bore you with all this research, but I want you to also trust that this information is coming from research published in the Journal of Circulation. I found that women with persistent insomnia during midlife had a 70 to 75% increased risk of later life cardiovascular events. This is not an inconvenience. These are actual events. What do I mean? Heart attack, stroke, and heart failure. Again, this is not everyone, but if we know the statistics, we can then do our best to change some of that, decrease our risk. Cardiovascular disease remains a leading cause of death in women. Sleep is now included in the American Heart Association's Life Essential 8. No smoking, which is a big one. We now are making sleep a priority. We're realizing the implications and the importance of sleep. Sleep is no longer secondary. It is foundational. No more, like I mentioned earlier, none of this, I'm going to get my beauty sleep. These are health issues. Sleep deprivation, I'm going to go into this again because this is more just focused on what this study, and this is the American Heart Association's information, according to them, which is a little repetitive, but it's going to increase our systemic inflammation, our LDL oxidation, how we metabolize sugar, insulin resistance, our sympathetic tone, our endothelial dysfunction, as I mentioned earlier. And the importance of mentioning this again is that it is vascular physiology. This is not lifestyle fluff. This is the point that I'm driving across by repeating it in the appropriate places. Now, with the cardiovascular events, we're going to go into the brain aging and sleep. This is more data. I'm sorry, I'm bogging you down with a lot of data. I'm going to put you to sleep if you're listening to this. But I think, again, where this information is coming from is important. There is a longitudinal data from Cardia. So, what does Cardia stand for? It's the Coronary Artery Risk Development in Young Adults Study. Okay. This is studying development in young adults and cardio risk factors. Why is this important? Because Cardia is a very large, long running US prospective cohort study that began in the mid 80s, and it enrolled over 5,000 young adults between the ages of 18 and 30. We've got their baseline health and has followed these young adults for decades to examine how how early life and midlife risk factors influence their cardiovascular disease, their metabolic health, brain aging, cognitive decline, and their lifestyle exposures, including sleep. A cohort of that study demonstrates that adults reporting poor sleep early in midlife had brains appearing up to 3 years older on an MRI 15 years later. What does this all mean? It means that researchers are tracking the same individuals over time. Sleep patterns were measured early in life. Brain scans were performed years later, and poor sleep correlated with accelerated structural brain aging later in life. It's showing how you live is affecting you in your older years. But we can fix all that. When we're younger, we're in school, we're studying, we're working hard. But now that we're aware, we can fix that. But then also how you raise your children, your family members, you can share this with the younger people in your life and show like this really does matter. So, from our second opinion lens, this reframes sleep as not a lifestyle preference, not as a productivity hack, but as a longitudinal information. I think what's positive now is that more people look at health and lifestyle as being healthy. It's not so much of looking a certain way or how people are perceiving you. I think this newer generation is genuinely concerned about their health. Positive. Because I know I was living my life more as to look a certain way, not so much as the long term implications. But when you know better, you do better. Okay, so what is the takeaway here? Sleep in your 40s influence brain integrity in your 60s. Your REM sleep is essential for your nerve endings in your brain, your lymphatic clearance. Basically, your lymphatic system is like the garbage disposal of your body. So, rid of those toxins, your beta amyloid regulation, emotional memory integration. If you disrupt sleep chronically, your cognitive resilience is going to decline. Bottom line is this, all these fancy words is that when we are sleeping, our brain is cleaning and detoxifying as we sleep, along with organizing all of our memories and experiences of the day. Any disruption of this is going to therefore affect our cognitive resilience. Why does midlife feel harder? You might hear a lot of women say, I've never had sleep issues before, and they're right. I am included. I never had sleep issues. I could fall asleep in the drop of a dime. I worked hard and then I was slept hard and then I woke up. No issue. This is completely different story now. And what happens is it doesn't help when then you know this and you get stressed out by knowing you're not going to be able to sleep. It's not a good combination. Before midlife, estrogen supported our serotonin balance, progesterone supported GABA signaling, and melatonin production was stronger and airway tone was different. Now you understand how midlife shifts all of this, and stress and caregiving and financial pressure and high functioning expectations, and sleep becomes the first system to destabilize. When you're wired at 11:30 and midnight and you're exhausted at 6 a.m., you're functioning, but you're not restored. And none of this is weakness. It is your endocrine transition layered into modern stress. I'm going to talk about another term because I found this interesting because I've heard it used in different contexts. And this is the first time I've heard it in this context with talking about sleep. And we're going to talk about menodivorce, MENO dash divorce. You may have heard of it in a different setting. I'm going to unpack this in a sleep setting. It refers to two overlapping realities: sleep divorce and relational strain during menopause. Back to ResMed's survey, which I mentioned earlier. And if you want to look it up, it's a global survey. So it's ResMed, ResMed, and it should pop up immediately. It was pages of information, global data on sleep. According to this research, 18% of couples permanently sleep separately. So I know many couples, actually, I just found out recently, I didn't know they weren't sleeping in the same bedrooms. This has nothing to do with them not being in a loving relationship. This is just because they can't sleep together because of this divorce. So it kind of falls into this category. 50% of US couples sometimes sleep separately. 50%. Okay. And it could actually save your marriage. Snoring, restlessness, schedule mismatch are major factors. And women are more likely to report nightly disruptions from a partner. Now, you're going to layer in, think about it, your night sweats, your irritability, your hormonal mood changes, your anxiety, your exhaustion. And suddenly, we're sleeping poorly, you're snapping more easily, your libido shifts, and you're questioning everything. Sleep fragmentation increases irritability and reduces emotional regulation. So you might be listening and asking yourself, is it menopause? Is it exhaustion? Is it my relationship that's shitty? Well, sometimes it's one thing and sometimes it's all of it. I hate to say it. But I would say statistically, what I'm learning is that it's probably all these hormonal shifts. And men go through hormonal shifts too. I know I'm giving a lot of attention to the women, but men have their andropause and they're going through their own hormonal shifts. And so a combination of all these things is a perfect storm. It is deeply relational. And research shows couples who co sleep experience higher oxytocin, lower stress, and more REM synchronization. So there are many positive reasons for co sleeping. And a lot of people can't imagine not sleeping with their partner. And then there's a lot of people that don't sleep with their partner and now they cannot imagining ever again sleeping with their partner. They actually pick and choose when they sleep with their partner, like during the week, if they have to be productive, and then on the weekends, depending on their schedule. And I have to tell you, I was really surprised because these are couples who have amazing relationships. I've been with them personally, professionally, had I not known what was going on behind closed doors. And it turns out because they're probably all getting the appropriate amount of sleep. I digress. What it comes down to, midlife is not breaking relationships, chronic exhaustion is. You might want to explore this with your partner. Why do we normalize this and why that's dangerous? I think a lot of us can relate on we just live with this poor sleep, as I mentioned earlier, and it was always a badge of honor. 22% of people are ignoring their sleep. They're just pushing through. 22% globally, and then that number rises to 33% in the US. Midlife women are very high functioning individuals. We push through. We've got a lot of shit to do and we need to get it done. And our focus is working at the task in hand. And that's men too. Men are the same way. Midlife men, they've got a lot on their plate. All of us, we are dealing with these modern day stresses and jobs and financial pressures, and we do what we need to do. So, why we need to pay attention? According to multiple findings, now we're going to get into the amount of sleep. Short sleep, which is less than 6 hours, is associated with 2.5 times greater mental distress. So if you are getting less than 6 hours, I believe 7 hours is ideal. Some people need more. But physiologically, whether you think you can function on less sleep, your body needs at least 7 hours sleep. If you're not getting your 7 hours sleep, if you're getting less than six, you are going to have increased insulin resistance, elevated cardiovascular risk, increased cancer risk. And there's a lot of emerging data coming out about that. This is not showing resilience or a badge of honor, like I mentioned. This is silent erosion of all of us. Globally, it is a crisis. Let's talk about what we can do about this. Okay. I think we focused on the data, the negative, or what's actually going on. What can we do about this? Here's what we can do. One, I think a big thing is getting curious with your hormones. Chances are, if you're feeling off, it's your hormones. I know I share a lot of personal information because I feel like I went through it, and if I can help one person out there who's listening, I feel like I have done my due diligence. And how can you do that? Talk to your OBGYN or a menopause informed provider. Now, this was interesting. I talked about this in another episode when I talked to Dr. Betsy, because there's a lot of pressure on OBGYNs to know everything. And they're actually not trained in hormones. They're trained to deliver babies. Fun fact. So you may have to seek out a provider who is heavily researched in hormones. Men generally see urologists for their prostates. Urologists are very knowledgeable when it comes to testosterone for men and women, actually. I think they're underutilized, actually. The more information that I read and the more podcasts and people and talks that I go to, I feel like urologists are this untapped specialty when it comes to hormones. You might want to seek one out. But the bottom line is you might have to seek out a provider who's heavily researched in this area. Ask about hormone therapy candidacy, sleep apnea screening, thyroid evaluation. It is very good to research and empower yourself so you can have informed discussions with an expert, but try not to, I'm not even going to say try, do not self diagnose, because if you are not a trained medical and health professional, you can look at data and then come up with a story and misconnect dots in areas that they're trained to do. So it's good to have information, but don't jump the gun. But I do want you to investigate. I personally had to go through 3 doctors before I landed on a fourth, who's now my provider. It was an ugly situation. I will tell you, I wasn't sleeping. I was gaining weight. I was irritable. I have a job where I really need to rest. I work variable shifts. I'm also working as a journalist on top and working in healthcare. So it was really, really frustrating when I was doing all the right things and nothing was adding up. I feel you if you're listening. But keep searching, you will find. And do not settle till you find somebody who really listens and who really knows what they're talking about. Because I also went through doctors who looked fancy on the outside, but they really didn't know hormones. Don't be swayed by what the way things look either. You could be pleasantly surprised who you find as a provider. I think it's important to find someone who speaks your language. And this is for young men and women as well. I know young women, because I have to be honest with you, this had started in my 20s. So this is not like it just started in midlife. This was something I had been going through, but I didn't have the confidence to speak up. And you might be listening and can relate. Okay, so what can we do? Number two, create a temperature strategy in your rooms. You're going to keep your bedroom dark and on the cooler side, 65 to 68. It's also going to be nice on your utility bill if you're living in the colder northern hemisphere. Layer your bedding, breathable pajamas. Really want to manage these hot flashes as much as possible. I personally use a sleep mask. Not only does it keep out the light, but it almost acts very similar to like a weighted blanket. It's very calming. Once my sleep mask is down, everything also gets quiet. I am a city person. You don't even notice the light pollution that's around you until you invest in a sleep mask that feels so cozy next to your skin and your face. Now I'm at the point I can't sleep without it. I have to travel with it. It's almost like a little security blanket. You might be listening and feel the same way. You're going to also protect your winding down hour. No screens, instead, dim lighting, meditation, journaling, breath work. Your nervous system needs time to wind down and transition down very gradually. I'm also going to talk about alcohol. Even though alcohol consumption is down, it is down statistically. I don't know where it is globally, but I know alcohol consumption in the US is down. But I'm still gonna mention it because even one nightly glass of alcohol can reduce your sleep quality by 40%. That is a significant percentage. Yes, it does sedate, but it fragments that REM sleep, which is why usually if you've had a little too much to drink, you pass out and you feel shitty. Number 5, you might want to consider magnesium or melatonin strategically. I have my little magnesium mocktail in the evening. I've got some liquid melatonin. I've got my magnesium glycinate. All this really nicely calms the nervous system. I just want to know for melatonin, 1 to 5 milligrams short term can help, but do not exceed 10 milligrams because we only have so many receptors for melatonin. So if you need more than that, it's a different problem. You don't want to mask your sleep apnea either. And that actually came straight out of Dr. Barone's episode from season 1. So he specifically talked about that. Also, morning light. And also, which is why it's good to get on a sleep schedule with working out and morning light. So, when you wake up early, that morning light anchors our circadian rhythm. So, really try to get a few minutes of that morning sun right in your face, first thing. And strength training improves sleep architecture as well. This is midlife gold. And it doesn't have to be very overly thought out and produced. Strength training does not have to be fancy. I'm actually in the process of revamping my strength training now, and I have a gym in my building where I live in New York. And no longer do I have a gym membership. I'm utilizing since I moved and just utilizing simple exercises using my body weight that I can make sure I get in daily. Does not have to be overly complicated because we don't need one more obstacle. Staying on that sleep schedule where you get up early, that morning sun, there's quite nothing like it, honestly. Oh, and you know what I'm going to know? I actually, just thinking about this, I have um, I wouldn't even say it's an alarm clock. It's not, it's called Hatch. Anybody out there familiar with this? It's a device that you can put in your bedroom. It has different types of white noise and it wakes you up with lights. You can set the timer on your phone and it mimics sunset and sunrise, and it gradually prepares your brain for sleep and wakes your brain up in the morning. And I did not have not fully utilized my hatch, so I'm working on that. That might be something you might want to look into. A friend of mine recommended it. This is one way to keep your devices out of the bedroom because you can set this, start setting the tone, and if you look into it, you'll see what I'm talking about, but it does have the alarm, the time in it, but it's not as obvious as, say, a traditional alarm clock that we grew up with. You might want to look into that. I digress. Okay, 7, evaluate your relationship sleep patterns. If snoring is present, get test. If you feel like if you wake yourself up, if somebody else is telling you that you're snoring, check it out. And if your schedules clash, in a relationship, compromise. And if you need temporary sleep separation, communicate it as a strategy, not as rejection. Sleep divorce is not relationship failure, but silence about sleep strain often is. Who knew? This could be solving some of your relationship issues. We're getting near the end. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I know this is much longer than expected it, but I wrote this episode out a few times and I really did not want to leave out information that I thought could help you get a grasp on this. If you hung in there, kudos to you. Once upon a time, we bragged about being able to function on 4 hours of sleep. And then suddenly midlife arrives and our bodies say, no, I'm not having it. We're done with that. Can you relate? Fortunately, and as it turns out, this is not decline. This is information to help us improve the quality of our life, longevity, mortality, and morbidity. Midlife is not fragile. Let's remove this verbiage. It is responsive. When you adjust, your body adjusts. When you protect sleep, you protect your brain, you protect your heart, you protect your mood, you protect your marriage, all of your relationships, including, I think, most importantly, the relationship with yourself. The more informed you are, the more powerful all your choices become. I'm going to keep learning, asking better questions, and I'm going to share what I find. I'm so glad that you hung in here with me. As of this week, March 1st, Second Opinion has officially reached 25 countries. We are global, and that really encouraging me to get you better information. I've always been inspired to do this. Seeing how many people are looking for this information who are hungry to live a better midlife, that even inspired me and empowered me even more. So thank you. If this episode resonated, I want you to go back, listen to that interview with Dr. Daniel Barone from season 1. I know I mentioned him quite a few times. You're probably fatigued from that, but he was really good. And share this episode with one woman over 40. Start with one change this week. You don't have to start with 10, just one thing. You don't have to research all these things, just one. As I said earlier, this month, I'm going to be optimizing my sleep space right alongside you because information without implementation is just more noise and we do not need that. So my friends, that is a wrap for this episode. It was created and produced by me, Rosemarie, from New York City. Until next time, get some rest.